What a task these fine folks face. The selection committee meeting today in Texas to determine the second release of the college football rankings. Where will Michigan land? What about Georgia, West Virginia? Those questions will be answered definitively tonight. For now, we head to Indianapolis, annually the site of football's Big Ten championship, but tonight, the site of the Champions Classic. 10th ranked Michigan State taking on number 1 Kansas, then number 4 Duke facing off against number 2 Kentucky on the hardwood. And that is where we find our gridiron guys, David Pollack and Joey Galloway, joining me, Jen Latta, here on College Football Live. Week 10 offered some clarity. We got the division champions in the SEC and across the board, the landscape of college football. But still plenty of questions left to be answered, gentlemen. So, Joey, I'm going to start with you. What is the biggest question you have for the committee tonight?
I just want to see how far LSU falls. The committee had a lot of respect for the resume in their first rankings, putting them ahead of an undefeated Notre Dame team. And so now they lose to the number 1 team in the country, by far and away the number 1 team in the country. But LSU's at home and they get blown out. So then what does the resume look like now? What does the committee think of that? So I just want to see how far they fall and what that says about the rest of the top 10.
That'll be interesting, but I don't care about any of it and what any of it says, because it's all going to play itself out. There is no situation that I see in the top 10, in the top 8, that isn't going to work itself out in the end. So
you realize we do have to do a show, right?
Yeah, we do, but
we can't call
we'll
it
do
off.
it to the best.
we cannot call it off
to
just
the
so
fullest.
you know.
But if you want to look at it, everything's out in front of everybody, and I mean, I don't have any big questions that I'm just dying to get answered.
Let's talk about Notre Dame, guys. They obviously are in a fantastic situation in the fact that they haven't lost a game yet, one of 4 remaining unbeaten teams, and yet they could stumble in the last few weeks of the season if they were to get a loss. David, do you still see them in the top 4?
Well, I mean, that's a tricky question to see where everybody else is and what everybody else does. I mean, Michigan obviously plays Ohio State. They could lose as well. Georgia's going to play Alabama in the end. I think if you're looking at Notre Dame, to guarantee themselves a spot, just like everybody else, they need to run the table and go undefeated. If they lose and it's against a 1-loss Michigan, which is going to be right there in the hunt, I think, till the very end, I think Notre Dame will get the nod. So it's not just about one loss. To me, how did you lose? Who did you lose to? Where did you lose? All that stuff comes into account. But against Michigan is where it's going to get really interesting down the stretch for me.
Yeah, to slam the door shut, Notre Dame has to win out. And if they don't win out, then they're going to leave themselves hanging out there for a conversation that we generally have at the end of these things. We get to the playoff conversation. Last year was Ohio State and Alabama.
Yep.
You just leave yourself open to a conversation if you don't win out. If you look at their resume, though, it gets stronger and stronger because of the Michigan win. And as long as Michigan continues to roll and look as good as they've looked.
Important happened. They played Northwestern. They dominated Northwestern. We talked about the criteria and all that stuff. Common opponents is another thing. Michigan played Northwestern. They were down 17-0, found a way to win. They get credit for that. But, I mean, that wasn't even a competitive game with Notre Dame. People talk about Michigan being a totally different team now late in the season. So is Notre Dame. Notre Dame's got a different quarterback now that we've seen makes this offense way more. Dexter, how about at running back? Dexter Williams comes in, an explosive running back. So I think Notre Dame also is a different team than start of the season. And if you get to the end of the season, Joey, I'm just telling you, if we get to the end of the season and you're going to tell me head-to-head doesn't matter, your little rants you have, I'll have one of my own.
Why do they be little?
Why do we play the game?
Why do my rants have to be little?
You're little.
They're not little. They're not little rants, because sometimes teams deserve to be ranted about.
Sometimes.
And so I've gotten to that
Sometimes
situation in those conversations. And you look at this Northwestern team, and it probably, if there was a big surprise to me in the first rankings, was the fact that Northwestern wasn't ranked. You know, they were winning 4 games straight. They're leading the Big Ten West. And as much respect as we have for the Big Ten, the fact that they're leading the West, I thought they should have been ranked, and that would have helped Notre Dame's resume if Northwestern was a
still
ranked
leading
win.
the West.
And so they're still leading the West. And, you know, but the conversation, though, about Notre Dame and how good they look, you're right, Ian Book changes them. And I believe that's why Williams looks so much better at running back. All of a sudden, there's no safety in the box, because that safety has to worry about Ian Book throwing the football. So it helps out their run game. They're a completely different football team.
All right, guys, similar situation for Alabama. Not the same situation, obviously, but similar in that they are undefeated. If they were to stumble down the stretch, would they be penalized, or is there any chance that Alabama could be left out of this scenario at this point, David?
Go ahead, Joey.
Alabama could lose the rest of their games and get in.
Oh,
Alabama, honestly, like the conversation about Alabama that we're having is unlike any conversation we've had probably since the playoff has started.
Why?
I have not
Why is that conversation
I
like
have
that?
not seen this large of a gap between number one and everyone else since we've been doing these playoff
ROI?
shows.
Rest of y'all?
You're absolutely right. What they've done and the way they've done it, and everyone talks about their schedule, they haven't played anybody. Well, this past Saturday, they played someone. In
the toughest atmosphere
exactly
in college football at night against a team that now everybody's going to call them overrated. Okay, overrated top 5 team. They're a top 10 team and made them look very average. Yes, Alabama can stumble, I think. Now, listen, I don't think they can stumble to a big defeat. I think they can. I think it has to be a close game. I think if they go lose to Mississippi State, I think that's a different loss than it is to Georgia. If they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game, that might be a different conversation if it's a close loss. But it has to be close because I just think because of last year they got the benefit of the doubt. I think there'll just be some backlash and some Alabama, wait, they played one good team, they beat them. They played another good team, they lost. I think actually they need to at least be in a competitive game, and it has to be close. It can't be a blowout.
Well, first off, exactly. We don't see them getting blown out.
No.
Every game they play is competitive. I truly believe that Alabama is as solidly in as any team we've seen at this time, at this point in the season. They could absolutely lose a game, and we won't even argue when they get in. Now, we have arguments about other teams getting in. We won't argue.
But every game matters, Joey.
Yeah.
Every game matters.
I agree.
Big difference, though, Joey, between losing out, which would be 4 games to end the season,
I
and
think they
losing
could
one
do
game.
it.
To be clear,
They might
I
be able
was
to do
going
it.
to save you and say that you were exaggerating, being hyperbolic, but you're sticking to your guns there. That this is a team
Somebody's
that could
tweeting
get
at me
in.
right now. I can't believe you're saying that. Yeah, I understand.
So we don't want to clarify it all. We just want to let people get angry. All right,
they can lose the
fantastic.
rest of them.
Let's keep on rolling here on College Football Live. The lone hope for the Pac-12, of course, is Wazoo, and that it seems like just a glimmer of hope at this point. So this isn't so much, do you think they'll get in to the top 4, but is there any path with help from other teams where you could see a Pac-12 team representing at the end?
Yeah, there's a path, but like you said, I think it's a path that needs to be ironed out. And first of all, I think you have to have a 2-loss Big 12 team, and we're not far from that. I think, but that has to be a 2-loss championship Big 12 team. The Pac-12 is the weakest conference of the Power 5. Washington State's non-conference was bad, really, really bad, so that doesn't help them. But I think when you look at Washington State, they also have to win the Apple Cup at the end of the season, which they haven't won, by the way, since 2012. So they got to win. They got to have help from the Big 12. They got to have help from others, too. But here's the thing, Joey, those people that are above them, Clemson, Alabama, all those undefeated teams, Notre Dame, they can all still stumble and still be ahead of Washington State. So they need a ton of help.
Yeah, and it really depends on what the committee gives respect to Oregon, Stanford, teams that aren't ranked, how the committee feels about those teams. Utah just crushed them this past weekend. Utah losing. Utah came out in the first rankings, and they ranked number 15.
Wow.
And so the committee gave some respect. They put 2 teams in the top 15 from the Pac-12. So then that says, okay, we think you got 2 good teams. Well, then Utah goes out and loses, and now you got 3 teams tied for the Pac-12 South lead with 3 losses. And so that hurts, because if you're looking at chances for Washington State to build a resume that they didn't build early on in the season, it is tough to find those wins. And Utah losing probably hurts Washington State more than any loss this entire season.
And I wonder in the end if it matters how Washington State lost, because they didn't get, I mean, I'm not going to say it was all on the refs with the targeting call, but it was a really bad end-of-game situation. And if they do go undefeated, I wonder if they take that into account, because they say they take all factors into account. They kind of got hosed with a bad call that should have been targeting, and I think it would have been first and goal at like the 10 as opposed to missing a field goal that gets blocked at the end of the game against USC, and maybe they win the ball game. But either way,
it's
still,
I couldn't imagine the committee
do you think
doing
they'll run the
all
table?
of that. Washington State?
Yes. You do?
Yes.
I don't think they will.
But I've said that for years now. I was with them last year. When Washington State was undefeated midseason last year, I said they're going to run the table. Nobody ever runs the table when I say it, but I think they will.
But Bama's going to lose 4 games, so Bama's going undefeated, baby.
At least
Let's
3
go.
of them.
I've often wondered if it's more of cannibalization in that league, like we've talked about in the past about the Big 12, or if it's just kind of mediocrity across the board, and I'm leaning towards mediocrity when it comes to the Pac-12. Yeah, thumbs down, Joey. Thanks, guys. All right, coming up here on College Football Live, are you calm or concerned? Some potentially lopsided conference championship games. Where do our guys stand on those? Plus, is Clemson too untested? David and Joey will debate. And now for this week's Ultimate Performance presented by BMW. Instead of going for the tie, Mountaineers coach Dana Holgorsen and Heisman candidate Will Grier decided to go for the two-point conversion, which resulted in the Mountaineers' 42-41 win over Texas in Austin. Here's Grier on the decision to go for two in today's Planning for Success, brought to you by Northwestern Mutual.
I told him we're going for two. No, we had discussed on the sideline, after they score, we're like, if we go get this, let's go for two. We had that play kind of dialed up where I have a couple options, and we wanted to win the game. So when we scored, we didn't think twice. After two timeouts, we were still going to do it. We were confident, and like I said, we executed and we played hard.
It's amazing what the end of that game has done for Will Grier's Heisman odds. We'll discuss that later in the show. Here, only one Power 5 conference title game was set this weekend, Georgia, Alabama in the SEC. And if you take a look at some of the other conferences, this is what the matchups would look like if the season ended today. Some of those, you guys, pretty lopsided, or maybe even a rematch from the week prior in the case of Oklahoma and West Virginia. So let's start with you. Are we calm or concerned, David, about the state of conference championships right now?
Well, I think if you're expecting to have a competitive conference weekend, you're concerned because you're not going to with the list of teams. I mean, it's getting bad. You look at the ACC Coastal. Pittsburgh is 5-4. You look at their out of conference to getting thumped by Penn State, getting thumped by Central Florida. I mean, where else do we want to go? Pac-12, Joey. The UCLA Bruins are still mathematically in the Pac-12 race.
Well, they just fell one game behind this past weekend.
One game behind. If they win their next three games, they could be in the Pac-12 conversation.
2-7.
They could be 5-7 at the end of the year if they win their last three games. So, it's bad. And let's be honest, the Big Ten ain't any better. Northwestern, you look at their they got 3 out-of-conference losses already too. So it's just, I would rather see the format. I want to see the format for every league like the Big 12. I would love to see the two best teams play in a championship game at the end of the season. That would be awesome.
Nah, I don't know if I agree with you on that. When I look at the list, quite honestly, the ACC is the only one that really looks like a blowout to me. You mentioned yourself that Northwestern was up 17-0 on Michigan, just about a month ago. And so if you think of it that way, Northwestern can absolutely compete with Michigan. Georgia, Alabama would be a good game to watch. I mean, we can't help that Alabama's really good.
What about
Utah, Washington State? They already played. It was a close game then. I expect that to be another close game. And so what I'm saying is I'll take competitive games. I don't need them to be like top 10 teams playing. But if they're competitive, the only one I look at it on that list and say, man, that's going to be a blowout is Clemson against Pitt. Everything else looks like a game.
Here's what I want. Like everybody whines about the 14 playoff. Like last year was so awesome to have an 8-team playoff because you had the ACC championship game. The winner of Clemson and Miami were in the playoffs. SEC championship game, the winner of Georgia and Auburn were in the playoffs. Like we had across the board, Big Ten. If Wisconsin won, they were in the playoffs. Like it was really cool at the end of the season to have that play-in type game. This year?
I mean, you can't have that every year, man. So
I want it every year.
It happened one year, terrific.
I want it this year.
You can't have it every year because things change. And I don't have a problem with it. I like seeing different teams get in. I would love to see Northwestern win the Big Ten West. All we've been getting is Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I would love to see Pitt win the Coastal. I don't mind this. Bring in a new team. Let them play. Let's find out.
Everybody's mathematically available in the Coastal.
Exactly. Let's roll.
Pac-12.
Yeah. New team, no problem with that.
All right, you guys have been talking about the ACC. Another topic of conversation has been the level of competition that Clemson has played this year. So let's go to you, Joey. Are you concerned or calm about who Clemson has played headed into this final stretch of the season?
I don't really know that. I mean, when you say concern, I thought Texas A&M was a good ball club. I thought NC State was a good ball club. Syracuse took them down to the end, even though Trevor Lawrence had got hurt in that game, and it sort of changed the attitude of the Clemson
offense. So we calm or concerned
and started running the ball. And so I don't really understand, like, what else would you be? Like, they've played the teams on their schedule. They've had some close games, and it was a tough game.
Can I ask you a better question?
There's not an Alabama on their schedule, but who else is?
Can I just get you a better question?
What do you got?
Do you believe in Clemson?
Absolutely. I got them ranked. I've had Clemson ranked number 2 since the beginning of the season.
Okay,
so how much more can you believe in them?
So you're not doubting Clemson at all? You got full faith in Clemson.
Since the beginning of the season, Clemson's been
They're
the second
tested.
best team.
They're ready to roll. They're ready for the playoffs.
Who would they play? What are you talking about? Can they play Michigan? Can they play Notre Dame? And we're talking about a ball club besides Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
These guys have been there a few years now.
Yeah.
And so the attitude in Clemson, having played in this game and been to the playoffs the past few years, they're used to it. A coaching staff that knows how to navigate it. And so outside of a freshman quarterback, which those guys who've been there believe that he's the best guy to get them back, even though they had a guy that took them there last year, I'm not worried about Clemson at all.
I didn't understand why didn't we just say that from the beginning? There's no concern at all, because there is no concern. This team's there every single year.
Because the way TV works, we have to get if we just say yes and no, well then we would have a 14-second show.
Yeah, well,
and because all these people here are out here working, they set this thing up, man. It took a lot of work to set this desk up.
Remember, there's a clear difference in college football. There's Alabama, Clemson, and then there's everybody else. So
Clemson appreciates you putting them in that conversation with
they're
Alabama.
on the bus.
Yeah,
they're on those two buses.
Hey, if you're saying it's Alabama and Clemson, then you are not concerned at all.
It does in the slightest bit.
All right.
And Jen appreciates you basically ripping her question apart and rephrasing it, Paul. Like, I mean, this is all wonderful.
Yeah, ripped it
Let's
across
move on.
and then answered it. That's what we get out of Paul.
Right, exactly. He just wants to do all of our jobs. It's fine.
Exactly.
Auburn guys began the season in the top 10. Now they're out of the top 25. Today the program comes out and says that Gus Malzahn will be back next season. So he's already gotten the vote of confidence. Are you calm or concerned about his future at Auburn? Joey.
Oh, you didn't want to go David first so you can rip apart the question before I answer? Go, David. You go first.
I'm not the least big. The dude just signed. Listen, despite what some people would like at Auburn and they would like to have a coaching change, dude just signed a 7-year contract. And he's getting paid regardless. So he's going to get his millions upon millions upon millions upon millions upon millions. So it doesn't matter if they don't need a vote of confidence. The checkbook speaks for itself. They're not firing Gus Malzahn despite what some people want.
He took Auburn to the SEC championship game last year. I mean, we're talking about Gus Malzahn as if he's done nothing. There are a lot more coaches that Paul Feinbaum would fire before Gus Malzahn, but generally speaking, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I would never put a coach on the hot seat, but I think Gus Malzahn, in his situation, going to the SEC championship game last year, I don't even know why that would even be a question.
He only beat Georgia and Alabama last year.
Who did he beat again?
Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah, I don't know why that's a conversation. I don't know why that's a conversation. It's kind of strange.
Millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars also applies to David Pollack's salary here at ESPN, which is why he's fit to do all of our jobs. It's fine.
That is a lie.
Up next here on College Football Live, guys, should we just hand Tua Tagovailoa the Heisman Trophy or what? Our guys will discuss that after this. Plus, tonight on ESPN. Time now to discuss the Capital One fan vote. Who has the best shot of beating #1 Alabama? I think Joey says nobody. But Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Georgia are in the running. David, who do you think?
It's clear and away Clemson. I mean, Clemson is built to beat Alabama. We've seen them beat Alabama in the national championship game before, but it's not going to be easy. But Clemson is a clear-cut answer.
Yeah, there's even talk of that's why Dabo Swinney made the switch to quarterback, thinking that would give them a better shot of hanging with Bama. Make sure to go to twitter.com/SportsCenter to check out this week's Capital One fan vote. Speaking of Bama, let's take a look at Heisman watch following Week 10. According to ESPN experts, Tua Tagovailoa continues to lead the charge. 50 votes for him. He has a 96.8 total QBR, and that leads FBS. A close second, guys, is Oklahoma's Kyler Murray, and you see there Will Grier and Gardner Minshew, as well as Travis Etienne. Joey, are you ready to hand Tua the Heisman right now?
Yeah, I think it's a done deal. I was actually looking at the numbers. I'm surprised that Kyler Murray got as many votes as he did, and that's not to say that he hasn't been terrific. But the fact that they did lose a game, the fact that he threw 2 interceptions early in their last win against Texas Tech is a close game, I am surprised that he got that many votes. But I think it's Tua's trophy so far.
Put it in bubble wrap and go ahead and send it to Tuscaloosa because it is over. And listen, very rarely we have years like this where clearly the best team has clearly the best player in the country. You know, 2013, you had Jameis Winston, where it was that way and it was dominant. 2010, I think it was Cam Newton in Auburn, and that it doesn't happen very often. We're always looking for. Sometimes we start looking for somebody, but now this is pretty easy when you got the best team, the best player, all in one wrap, in one package. It is a wrap.
All right, David, but he's not exactly healthy. If that knee were to flare up and he weren't able to play these last few games of the season, would that affect his candidacy? Would that affect the outcome?
Was he healthy Saturday? Was he good to go? I mean,
He was good to go, but it did look like he was limping a little. Every time he celebrated with his teammates, there was concern about that knee. So if that were an issue, would that affect it?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be limping a little bit the rest of the season with the knee brace, and I think that's going to be part of his repertoire. But he keeps winning. Who's going to stop him? SEC championship game coming up, and maybe that's an opportunity. But it's pretty clear cut. It's hard to. I wish I could do it, Jen. I wish I could point somebody.
Yeah, he ain't got to play. He's going to win it. That's it.
All right, you can catch these guys tonight on the Reveal Show in between the games of the Champions Classic. Thanks for joining us here on College Football
Let's go shoot
Live.
some hoops,
We'll see
Jonah.
you next time.